Hi everyone, and thank you for joining me today. I am sharing a beautiful card using a gorgeous die set from Spellbinders. It is the Beyond the Door die set, and I absolutely love it. I think it's because it's a mix of greenery, it includes some florals as well as lemons and oranges. And one thing about me is that I absolutely love lemons. I love crafting lemons. I don't know why, but I just do. So I was in love with this set when I saw it. I am starting off by already having my pieces die cut. I will have all of my cardstocks used, detailed in the description down below. But I did a mix of two colors, a lighter and a darker, and they look nice together as well. I thought I was going to mix them, but I end up not. You will see that later on. But I do use the same Distress Oxide on these to add some depth. So I'm going to use some pine needle and I'm going to add that to these for some depth. Next up are the lemons. I die cut those from Factory Yellow. I know that immediately because that is my favorite cardstock right now. And I'm using mustard seed just to add a little bit of color on like the tips or a side so that it has like this shadowed effect. I am going to be showing you how I just add a little ink to various elements of this die set, but I'm not going to use all of them on this one card. Stay tuned to the end to see another project that I use some of these elements on as well. But once the lemons are done, I then move on to the flowers. I die cut these from Bubblegum and Flamingo, if I'm not mistaken, and I use picked raspberry to add some shading and depth to these. Again, all of the cardstocks that I use will be down below for you to be able to access. Grabbing the piece that I want to be my water, I die cut a lot of the basic door and brick and pebble stone. I die cut that out of white cardstock so I can add ink. So for the water, I used Salvaged Patina. For the stairs, I die cut those out of a blue cardstock. I think it's Iris. And I used Prize Ribbon Distressed ink to add more depth. I wanted the blue to pop even more, so I built up the color on the stairs as well as the doorway and the shutters that I'm going to be using. So when you see all of those, I die cut them from blue cardstock or iris cardstock, and then I built up the color using Distress ink. I wanted the background to look almost like a sunset, so I grabbed a piece of ombre cardstock from a paper pad and I added a little bit more picked raspberry to it. And then I went in with pumice stone and rubbed that along the bottom so that I can make my pebbled walkway on the bottom of this piece. I put the water in place and I'm going to go back and fill in those little gaps with the white little die cut pieces so that it looks like waves. And then I just randomly placed glue dots and used the die cuts that are supposed to be like cobblestone, and I placed those throughout that pumice stone area of the cardstock. I then filled in all of the little wave pieces and moved on to trying to assemble my door. So I went ahead and inked the doorway and the shutters, and I glued those together with wet adhesive. I ended up gluing them backwards, so I did have to take those apart and make sure that my shutters opened the right direction because I did not want them covered up by the greenery. I used foam squares to make the doorway pop even more, and then I added the tops of the stairs to the blue stairs, and I wanted those to pop as well. And I started playing around with my greenery placement. This is around the time I was like, this isn't working. So I decided to eventually flip the shutters. So it was an easy fix because I didn't put a ton of glue. Things immediately looked so much better. So again, I started playing with the greenery, and although I die cut two different tones, I ended up primarily using one here for all the greenery on the side of this doorway, I used the darker of the two. And I was going back and forth between mixing in the florals and the lemons or just using the lemons, and I decided to just go with the lemons. I did use tiny bits of foam. Some were exposed, but that was okay because I knew I'd be placing lemons over them. So I just tried to add dimension here and there as best as I could. Filling in gaps, I used a mix of the foam squares and the wet adhesive, tucking things, just trying to fill it all up. And I just love this card so much. All of the colors and then the contrast between the yellows and the blues. I just think it is so beautiful. If I did not mention before, this process is sped up quite a bit. I do not work this fast, but I just wanted you to see my full process so you can see this card come to life. I did go back and die cut one of the flower pots, and I decided I would add some of those pink flowers in there. So as I was filling out the vines and the lemons, I also wanted there to be a pop of color on the opposite side of the door, and that's where my flowers will be. So I was just tucking things and just trying to make sure that it looked as full as possible. I wanted there to be an abundance of greenery there. I was mostly satisfied with how this was looking, but I still felt that something was missing. So I did go back and grab a few more of the little cobblestone pieces, and I added those to the side of the door at the top where the white space is, just to add a little bit more texture and fill in the space. So I just used wet glue to add those on. So it's like that subtle texture because it's tone on tone, which I love. Those little flowers were missing something in my opinion, so I went in with some Nouveau drops and I just added some like translucent drops to the centers. I also went back and forth about which color I wanted on the back. I went with the yellow because I just thought it popped even more. So once I'd had that figured out, I end up matting that using some foam squares, and then I die cut out the Hello Sunshine sentiment. These come from the La Dolce Vita banners. So I used the Hello Sunshine from that. And I didn't want it to hang all the way over the entire card, so I did scoot it in a bit. But I love how this turned out. Thank you so much for joining me. I do have a blog post up with a few of these projects as well as details, especially on the second card that I'm showing. So if you are interested in any of that, please head over to my blog where you can find out even more. Thank you so much for joining me and have a great day.